Hello, we are live. Is anyone here? I don't know if I'll be able to hear you. I see Steven says hello in the chat. Hello, Steven. Hello, Steve. That's a good sign. You can't hear me. That's super weird. Stefania, can you hear me? Woohoo! Good. All right. We're expecting maybe one more. Let me check in with him to see if he's coming. How was the video feed? Smooth? Oh, so Steven, you're not seeing video either. Pavel's here. All right, okay, good. Good. Pavel, can you hear me? What? Ah, Google Hangouts. So much money, yet so ineffective. The person who is in Germany can hear better than the people who are like in my neighborhood. Let's see if I can even give people the option. This is one viewer, so maybe that's just Stefania. Let's see. Stefania, do you hear a lot of noise in the background? Pavel, you're good now. Okay, good. It's a little weird for me not having like speaking and not having people respond. Oh. Okay, let's wait one more second for Steve to come back. I think he's back. Steve, can you hear? Sweet. Can you all hear me when I'm standing back here, or is it too quiet? Is it still too quiet? Is it too quiet right now, or is it okay? Okay, all is working. Perfect. Okay. Well, so Welcome to the emotional self-defense class. This is the first online version of it, and I appreciate you all joining to experiment with me and see where this goes. So I've been running the class since January. I ran it in 7 countries now. Stephanie actually took the class when I ran it in Germany, and Steve was there when I ran the class in Dubai, and he's now visiting the Bay. And Pavel is a good friend of mine who is in Colorado right now, who was there when I started iFilio. So what I want to do is just give, so basically before I go into regular class, I start with, I'll say something and then you respond. And just a heads up, a lot of the things I'll be doing is it's either physical activity or it's something where you'll be speaking. Note, I don't hear what you're saying and nobody else on the call hears what you're saying, so it's more for you just to say it than it is for other people to hear it. A lot of the work that we'll be doing is just for you to voice a lot of things that are going through you. So I hope that this provides a more anonymous platform than in person. Really challenging and really nerve-wracking for people to just jump right into the middle of it with strangers and other things. So how I typically start class is that I will say a phrase and then I want you to repeat after me. If you don't want to repeat it, that's fine. I don't hear if you do or not. So, so I'll repeat a couple phrases and then we'll go from there. So I will be physically challenged today. I will be mentally challenged today. I will be emotionally challenged today. I am trying my best. Everyone else is trying their best. All right. So the first part of the class, and I'll do the same thing online, physical exercise that relates to emotion. So instead of jumping into a balance game, which we would in class, what I'll do online is just going to jump straight into the balance exercise. So what I want to do is basically find a hand on your right leg and put your left leg in the air. So try to put your leg up as high as you possibly can. Again, I don't know if you're doing this, so it's okay if you can't put it up that high. But what you're going to try to do is try to find your limits. Actually, let me grab our timer for a second. You're trying to find your own limits, so go ahead and start. So if you're not wobbling, I've gone far enough. If this is something that is too easy for you, I suggest closing your eyes. That will make it a lot more difficult. All right, so put your left leg in front. Back up a little so you can see. Cross your left leg over in front of the other leg. If this is still too easy, put your head down and turn it side to side. That will mess directly with your balance system in your brain. If you have to take a break, that's okay. All right, put your leg out to the other side. Stereotypical emotional self-defense pose as you see in the logo. If you want, you can wiggle your foot around a little bit. Play with where your hands are. Really just try to find your balance and try to focus on what's going on. Internally, externally. If you want, look at yourself on the screen if your screen is showing it. All right, now we're going to put it out to the back. So, got about 15 seconds left, 10 seconds left. Whew. Oh, man. Whew. Okay, I want to check in with people real quick because I don't know how that went. So Could everyone hear me okay? Was everyone able to participate in the activity? Just a quick little check-in on the chat. I don't see anyone responding, so I'm a little worried. Sweet. Good. Work for Pavel. All right. What we're going to do now is obviously we're going to do the other leg. So stand on your left leg. Let's see. Legs hurt. Haha, great. Perfect. All right, so you're going to be on your left leg and put your right leg up in front. Again, this is about finding your limits. Everybody's got different limits, and depending on the day, your limits may be different. So if you didn't sleep well last night, this may be more difficult. If you got really good sleep last night, you had a good exercise this morning, this might be a lot easier. All right, I'll cross it over in front. All right, put it out to the side. If you want, play with where you put your torso too. So you put your head down far to this way, try to be horizontal, or you can put your head up like this and see what difference that makes. Ooh, and where it hurts more or less. Ooh. All right, now put it out to the back. Point your toe, you flex your foot, wiggle it around. You can try to sway and see how that screws you up. Whoa. Whew. All right. So, how was that activity for people? I want to let's see it on the chat. It's probably was it easier on one leg than another leg? Wow, chat's going to be really hard. It's going to be a lot slower to ask questions. So maybe these will just be rhetorical questions. You can answer them to yourself. I think it'd be nice if you can answer some in the chat, but maybe it's looking like it's taking a while. Okay, good workout. So maybe I'll just jump into an explanation of why we would do something like this. So, so for most of my life, I heard the phrase emotional balance and really didn't like it. Okay, here we go. Sorry, we got some answers coming in. Maybe I just need to be a little more patient. Good workout, became a bit easier the second time, went on a run earlier today, so Pavel's legs are fried. Good suggestion. How do I do poll? Okay, Okay, so I just threw up a poll. Does that, let's see how fast that works. I like the suggestion, Steve. All right. I think somebody may have got kicked out. There was 2 viewers at one moment. Now there's 3 viewers. Maybe somebody else dropped as well. Legs tired. Yes, all 3. Okay, interesting. Poll is interesting. Tricky part is it doesn't give open-ended responses. So anyways, so the reason that we would do this activity is that most of my life I thought balance meant a certain thing. Until I moved to Colorado, and Pavel knows this man. His name is Chris. And Chris, he has the Guinness World Record for the longest wheelie in an hour. Some of you may have heard the story, but wheelie basically go on a mountain bike on the back wheel around a track 64 times. He went 16 miles in 1 hour. And so, I mean, if you know Chris or if you've seen Chris, he zips around Colorado, which is at 4,000 or 5,000 feet altitude, going up and down mountains through cross traffic and just on one wheel, on the back wheel. It's incredible. And so, obviously, when I asked Chris the question, I was just like, how? How do you do any of this? And he said, well, when I was a kid, I used to pop wheelies for fun. You know, I just play around, kind of pop it up and go down. He said, but it wasn't until about high school where I realized it wasn't about staying in balance. It was about how do you get back to balance. So it was about how do you find your limits in different directions and still come back. And so for me, when I think about that, I apply it to emotional balance. So if you think emotional balance, I thought in my life meant life was just like this. It's incredibly boring. It's flat. You're not supposed to get excited. You're not supposed to get angry. You're not supposed to get sad. You're not supposed to be confused. You're just supposed to be there. And when I do this activity, I realize, no, it's not about staying here. It's about how do I get angry and come back? How am I allowing myself to feel sad and come back? It's not about the feeling. It's not about the getting away from balance. It's how do you come back to balance that really matters. And so when you do this activity, if you think of it as a metaphor, perhaps being pushed to the right is like getting hit with a force of anger. You can't control if you're going to get hit with something. It's coming. Oh, shoot. You got hit with it. What you can control is how do I come back? Maybe it's like, you know, that little, you know, like those punching bags where you hit like the rocking things, the rocking horses, whatever, you punch it and it goes way back, but then it always comes back up. It's the whole concept. How do you rebound instead of trying to prevent these things from happening in the first place? So if it's anger pushes you this way, maybe you're force of chest, you fall flat on your ass. And so the idea is how do you strengthen these different muscles so that when something unexpected happens, you're able to come back. You're able to get back to your balance. Lots and lots of examples. And I study many different things, and so if you look at it's not about being here. Homeostasis is how do you come back to homeostasis. But the trick is like, how do you come, for example, your blood pressure partner? They're often doing this. Network connection is experiencing difficulties. And the other trick is, I mean, if you think about it, architecture as well. So buildings, very tall skyscrapers. Speaking to Steve, Steve is based out of Dubai. And in Dubai, they have Burj Khalifa. Burj Khalifa is the tallest building in the world. These buildings are built to sway in the wind because if they don't, they're just going to fall down. It's the same thing. If we're incredibly rigid, I'm not going to feel angry, I'm not going to feel angry, I'm not going to feel angry. If somebody hits us hard enough, we're going to fall flat. Internet breaking down. Shoot. You would think Google has the best service for this, but okay. Let me check on the time right here. Okay, so it's 12:20 right now. I wanted to keep this call to 45 minutes just to see how it goes. I know we started a little bit late, but see if we can still kind of wrap up around time. We're a little worried that going too long on a webinar is different than going too long in class because of obviously we're sitting behind computers. So I'm going to move on to the next section, but before I do, I want to ask if there's any questions. Are there any questions? There is a question widget in here. So there's the chat, there's the polls, there's a QA, which is question and answer. If anyone has any questions throughout the whole thing, please just throw them in there. Okay. Not sure if it's the internet connection or people just don't have questions. We can move on to the next part. Is everyone okay to move on to the next part? Before I do that, I just want to check. Stephanie says she's good. Steven, all good. Cool. So the next part is the emotional part. And so before I go into this, just to give you a reminder or an introduction into how this class came about, I was taking a class called Krav Maga, which is a very intense, very practical physical self-defense class that was used to train the Israeli Defense Forces. Politics aside, it's really practical and it's really based in how humans naturally respond to things. And so what I wanted to do was create a class that was similar in its practicality and its intensity, but for dealing with emotional attacks. So instead of dealing with knife attacks and gun attacks and being physically choked, it's how do you deal with rejection? How do you deal with betrayal? How do you deal with guilt tripping? How do you deal with compliments? How do you deal with gratitude and love? And how do you deal with many other scenarios that typically throw us into that threat response, or that fight or flight or freeze, or I think there's a fourth, which is fake mode. And so the whole purpose of this class is really just to train people in getting better at responding to these threats by practicing a technique that's based on three things. And these three things come from a mentor of mine who's based in Sri Lanka, who does a lot of work with, I believe, neuroscience and also Ayurvedic medicine. And what he says is that there's three things we're trying to keep in balance at all times. And he says it's love, fair play, and truth. So sorry, it's truth, fair play, and love. Truth, fair play, and love. And so he says these are the three things we're trying to keep in balance at all time. And so when I was working on, I created an app called iFeelio, which was really good for me to get very honest with myself about how I was feeling and just to really touch down to the core of my being. I realized, okay, so I have the first step, which is truth. How do I tell the truth about how I'm actually feeling? Which is really difficult. And then I thought, okay, the second step is how do I consider how other people are feeling? And so this is to jump out of my experience, and this is fair play. So first step is truth, second step is fair play. And that's to tell people, basically to tell people how you imagine they might be feeling. Not how they're feeling, but how they might be feeling. It's very important to include this uncertainty because many of us don't like when somebody says, I know you're angry. I know you're feeling sad. I know something's wrong. No, there's not. And there's a lot of denial that will come up, which ironically is tied to the first one about being honest and telling the truth about how you honestly feel. And so the second one is about fair play, telling the other person how you imagine they might be feeling. And the third one is about connecting with love. It's love. What do you say to the person to reach out and tell them that you care about them? Is it thank you? Is it I love you? Is it I care about you? I appreciate you. I hope you have a better day. I'm just glad to get to see each other. So is it the gratitude? Is it the I forgive you? There's many different things that we can say that if we do steps 1 and steps 2 really well, then it naturally flows out, from what I've found. So mind you, these steps are very simple. They're also very, very difficult to do. So for example, I believe the first question, tell the truth about how you honestly feel. I think this is one of the most difficult linguistic challenges for humans. I also think it's one of the most simple things for us to do. I believe we're constantly communicating this already, but I think it's very difficult for us to communicate it in words. I think we communicate it with our intonation, with our eye contact, with our facial expressions, with our body posture, with our hands, with our feet. Many other things are communicating this. And I think it's very difficult for us to put a word onto it. And so I just wanted to highlight that, because what we're going to do now is we're going to go into drills. So in class, what we do is we do in the in-person class, we do a combination of basically drills on the technique and then partner work. So just like a martial arts class, you may have somebody standing, martial arts or even dance class, you'll have somebody standing up in front showing you, okay, this is how you do a proper kick. This is how you do the kick. This is how you do the kick. Let's work on the technique. Let's get better at the technique. And then a lot of times in the in-person classes, you would then match up with a partner and test out the technique. So say, for example, you're learning how to get out of physical chokehold in Krav Maga. You would practice doing this. You'd practice doing this. You'd practice doing things like this. And then when you get with the partner actually puts the choke on you, and you have to get out. So it's useful to practice both, so that you get used to the footwork and get used to the hand motions, and so your body knows how to respond. And then going into the situation makes it a lot more difficult. And so the same thing is here. What we're going to do online is we're going to do more drills. So if you think about, say for example, in partner work, rejection, going through rejection and doing step 1, truth, step 2, fair play, and step 3, love, is very difficult. It's hard enough to do alone without going through that. So anyways, without further ado, let's just jump right into it. What I'm going to do is we're going to do a drill, and then a drill for step 2, then a drill for step 3. So the drill for step 1 is I'm just going to ask you questions about how you're feeling when you think about different things. And so all I want you to do is, so I'm going to say, how do you feel when you think about going to work tomorrow? I want you to answer out loud. So we do this in class, and it's a little more, we do this in person, it's a little more scary because there's other people around. But here, if you say it out loud, you can be incredibly honest. There's nobody here that's going to hear you. Maybe someone in your local environment will hear you, so I don't know if you want to shout it, but there's power in just being able to voice it. And I'm not saying you have to be right. The idea of this is to just practice getting used to answering that question with words. And so if everyone's ready, which I'm just going to assume we are, unless I see people shouting through chat, no, not ready. So I'm just going to assume we are, and I'm just going to go ahead and start. So how do you feel when you think about going to work tomorrow? How do you feel when you think about going to see a movie tonight? How do you feel when you think about walking down a dark alley? How do you feel when you think about your financial situation? How do you feel when you think about your current health? How do you feel when you think about your current romantic relationship? How do you feel when you think about having to give a public speech? How do you feel when you think about trying to start your own business? How do you feel when you think about living in a big city? How do you feel when you think about moving apartments or moving houses? How do you feel when you think about traveling to a foreign country? Excuse me, traveling to a foreign country. How do you feel when you think about being in a crowded place? How do you feel when you think about seeing spiders? How do you feel when you think about seeing mice in the house? How do you feel when you think about jumping on a trampoline? How do you feel when you think about web development, web programming? How do you feel when you think about calling your father on the phone? How do you feel when you think about of having children or having children? How do you feel about going back to school? How do you feel when you think about approaching a stranger in a bar? How do you feel when you think about talking on the phone for 2 hours with somebody you love? How do you feel when you think about teaching a class? Okay, so that is the first drill, and if you notice, just asking lots of different questions to try to elucidate different emotional responses and have you get better at articulating what you think is happening. It's okay if it's not right. It doesn't have to be right. It's just about recognizing that you may be having a very wide range of emotions. Again, if anyone has any concerns, please. Oops, we have a question. I see. Oh, good. Happy to move forward. Excellent. Cool. So if I don't see anything pop up on the chat, I'm going to assume we're good to move on to the next step. And the next step is step 2. And so step 1 was about truth. It was about truth in how you were feeling. And now we're going to step out of our experience and focus on somebody else. So it's very easy to get caught in our own experience, and very honestly, using the app iFeelio, Stefania had a shock when she heard spiders. Nice. So using the app iFeelio, I had a conversation that I had very close in my life, and she says, I understand that iFeelio is very good at helping you get in touch with how you feel, but how do you take other people's feelings into consideration? And it hit me like a truck. Whoa. It was one of those conversations where you're in the conversation and you're feeling angry, you're feeling confused, and then she says something like that and you just drop. Whoa, that's a really good point. And so that led to a series of things, and what it's somehow culminated in right now is step 2. And step 2 is about fair play. It's about stepping out of your experience and trying to imagine the experience of somebody else. And we're not talking about intellectual experience, we're talking about emotional experience. And so what I want to say with this is, again, we're going to do the same thing as step 1, but what I want you to do right now is I want you to think of somebody in your life that's not near you at the moment. And by near you, I mean not in the same room. Somebody that's in another room, somebody that's on the other side of the country, wherever it may be. The person may not even, have to be, person's not aware that you're doing this. And so once you have somebody, I'm going to give you about a few seconds to think of somebody to come to mind. And then once you do, we're going to go into doing a very similar thing to the first step. All right, if once everyone has, let's see if polls work for that, reset. Okay, so I just threw up a poll. That's probably the fastest way to do something like this. All right. One, two, three, ready. Perfect. Okay. So, step 2, fair play. Tell the other person how you imagine they might be feeling. Imagine they might be feeling. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you similar round of questions. I'm going to say, how do you think this person might feel when they think about, etc. So, how do you imagine this person might feel when they think about driving a car? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about going to a new city? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about trying to dance hip-hop music? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about being on television? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about having to paint their home? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about being stuck in traffic? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about doing taxes? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about playing video games? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about playing soccer, football for those outside of the US? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about managing people? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about going for a long run? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about having to bake a dessert? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about singing at karaoke? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about their current financial situation? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about cleaning the house? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about investing in the stock market? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about having a beer later today? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about going to an amusement park, roller coasters? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about being in a loud environment? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about their current romantic relationship? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about you calling them on the phone later today? How do you imagine this person might feel when they think about coming to visit you or seeing you for the next time? Okay, so that's all about how you imagine they might be feeling. Step 3 is to connect with love. And so what I want you to do right now, and again, nobody hears what you're saying. Nobody here hears it. I want you to say out loud what you would say to that person if you had the opportunity to say one thing to them to connect with love. All right, so When you're done, just go ahead and click yes on the poll. If you can't think of something to say, you can always say thank you, or I care about you, or I appreciate you, or if you think they're struggling and having a really bad day, just say I hope things go better for you. Or cool. So I want to pause and just take any questions that anybody might have, because I want to hear a little bit of feedback. So if you can, just throw it into the chat. I don't know how to get an option for people to speak. I don't know if that's going to even be possible. How was that process for people? The chat seems to be really slow. That's an interesting point. On webinars, people can jump out at different points. They may not be there for the full class. With a class, you're guaranteed that people will most likely stay in the same space. Stefania really got into it. Oh, sweet. Cool. Okay, y'all. Well, it's about 12:45 right now, and I'm starting to realize, yeah, I think 45 minutes is probably the full length of something like this, just because of the lack of audio and video feedback. I think it's, yeah, I think 45 minutes is probably good enough. So I just want to say I was really nervous about how this would go. There's a lot of technical challenges. You never really know with technology, and I was also worried about the lack of interaction. There's interaction through the chat, and but also just I think me speaking at a mic in a camera for a long time scares me. So I imagine you all might not have had any idea what was going to happen, and a few of you one of you had seen the class in person, one of you had videotaped the class, and the other one just knows me. And I just appreciate you all for coming out and trying to experiment on this with me, and I hope it helped you in some way. So love to chat with you soon and hear more offline about how this went for you, and about how the process went, how the technology went, and other ways to improve this. So take care, everyone. Thank you so much.